Hey, what's up, everyone? Today we're taking a trip back to 2002 before Spider Man and Wolverine games, when Insomniac was mainly known for making awesome platformers, and one of their biggest hits, Ratchet and Clank. This series is still alive today, which is kind of wild because it's basically the last classic 3D platformer apart from Mario, still getting new entries. I just replayed the original, well, technically the HD remaster on PlayStation 3, and I've got some thoughts about it. Let's dive in. So the story kicks off with Clank, a little robot who escapes a factory and crash lands on the planet Veldon. That's where we meet Ratchet, a Lombax who, let's be honest, starts off kind of a jerk. His attitude feels strong at first, but honestly, I like it because it shows his character growth. I think it works way better than the PS4 remake, where they toned him down a little bit. Anyway, Clank fixes up Ratchet's ship, and the two team up and hop planet to planet trying to save the galaxy. The cool thing is, Ratchet isn't on board with the whole hero thing right away. He even looks to Captain Quirk for help, a so called TV superhero who, spoiler, turns out to be more of a villain in this one. Each planet has its own vibe. You've got cityscapes that feel like Star Wars' Coruscant, fortress islands, and the classic ice planet. It's really a nice variety of levels. Levels can be tough, sometimes frustrating with difficulty spikes, but they're always fun to explore and experience. The humor is another highlight. You meet tons of side characters that exist mostly to keep the comedy rolling. Even the main villain is kind of amusing. The writing is sharp, a little edgy, exactly what you expect from late 90s, early 2000s games. Overall, the story's good enough to keep you pushing forward. Now let's talk gameplay because this is where Ratchet and Clank really stood out. On the surface, it's your typical early 2000s 3D platformer, but it also mixes third person shooting. And honestly, this first game is probably the best balance between both of the two worlds. Later games would lean more heavily towards one side. Platforming is smooth for the most part, controls feel good. The problem is the amount of enemies they throw at you. Sometimes it feels like the game wants you to focus on combat rather than jumping around. Those checkpoint systems, they are brutal. Some of the larger levels make you start way too far back after dying. I was definitely swearing in this one. And the shooting, this is where the game really shines. The weapons. Even in this first entry, there's a solid variety. You got your basic blaster, which is surprisingly strong. And of course, Ratchet's iconic wrench. There are the comedy weapons, the morph gun that turns enemies into chickens, or the taunter, which is literally just a sound machine that's only useful to destroy crates. You got also bomb gloves, mines, and a Visibomb launcher where you control the missile in midair, and of course the legendary Rhino. That's Ripia new one, basically the most overpowered weapon in the game. It's expensive as hell, but absolutely worth it. The only downside is that the ammo is scarce. You'll find yourself constantly spending bolts just to keep stock. And since bolts aren't super plentiful in the first game, it can really slow down the progress. And speaking of bolts, this game makes you work for them. Crates don't always respawn, so you can't just grind forever. On my first run, I could afford most weapons, but the Rhino, yeah, that had to wait until New Game Plus. Another issue, no strafing. In a third person shooter, strafing feels essential, but it wasn't added until later games. Combine that with some bullet sponge enemies and the occasional auto aim frustration. And yeah, the difficulty spikes hit hard with those flaws. And to keep things fresh, the game throws in space battles and some puzzle solving sections. They're not super deep, but they do a good job breaking up the standard run and gun platforming loop. So at the end of the day, how does the original Ratchet and Clank hold up? Honestly, it's a strong start to the franchise. Fun characters, witty writing, crazy weapons, and gorgeous levels. But it could have been so much more. The checkpoint system is terrible. The shooting mechanics clearly needed polish. And on your first playthrough, the difficulty can get frustrating fast. But even with those flaws, I had fun, especially on challenge mode. For me, the original gets a 6 out of 10 as a solid game that laid the foundation for what became one of the PlayStation's most iconic franchises. And without this, we wouldn't have all the awesome sequels that followed. So that's my look back at Ratchet and Clank 2002. Did you play the original back in the day, or did you jump in later with the remakes and sequels? Let me know in the comments.